to meet some fundamental intellectual pursuits which are not only important in academic life, if seriously we want to survive in this field, but these are necessary basically, necessary part of this profession which we call higher education or academics. The topic of my discussion is language, the discourse of power, and the making of modern world. And as far as I am familiar with the linguistic environment and the intellectual, you can say, arena of this institute, I will keep my discussion bilingual and will try to render all conceptual things or specific concepts which come from the philosophy of language, which comes from basically history and the different traditions, whether related to linguistic traditions or history, into simple language, so that we can understand what I intend to say here, what I intend to convey. This discussion basically aims at threefold. First, to understand the scientific formation of language instead of its artistic uses. Second, how we can identify the location or the position of language when it comes to the power discourse. Third one, which is quite important, how language is playing or has been playing since early centuries a vital role in the formation of making of this world. So we can say modern world in nowadays. So first, to begin with the making of language, if this question is given to us, what could be the maximum possible definition of language? If this question is given to us, probably more than 1,000 definitions will come out. All these definitions, I don't say would be false or true, but authentic, because language is a very comprehensive phenomenon. But more or less, more than 90% definitions will be all about the characteristics of the language instead of the basic formation, instead of the definition. There is a fundamental difference between definition and characteristics. बहुत सारी ऐसी चीज़ें हैं जो लैंग्वेज के बारे में हमें ये सोचने पे मजबूर करती हैं कि लैंग्वेज बेसिकली इसके द्वारा हम अपनी फीलिंग्स को, अपने इमोशंस को एक दूसरे के साथ एक्सप्रेस कर सकते हैं. लैंग्वेज हमारी जो डेली लाइफ है, उस डेली लाइफ का जो डायनामिज्म है, उसकी जो गति है, उसका एक पार्ट है. We cannot live without language. Even we cannot dreaming without language. We do dream in language, and we do dream in our own language. We can't dream in foreign language. That is very interesting thing. हमें जो सपने आते हैं, वो अपनी भाषा में आते हैं. कभी उस भाषा में हम लोग सपने नहीं ले सकते जो हमें आती नहीं. और ये जो सपने लेने की प्रोसेस है, इससे भी एक इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्टर ये है, मेरे ख्याल से आप सब लोगों का ये एक्सपीरियंस होगा कि सपने इतने अनप्रेडिक्टेबल चीज़ें होती हैं कि उसमें सब कुछ होता है. जो चीज़ें यहाँ इस फिनोमिनल वर्ल्ड में नहीं होती हैं, वो सपनों में होती हैं. लेकिन एक चीज़ अगर आप लोगों ने नोटिस की होगी, एक चीज़ सपने में कभी नहीं होती. वी नेवर डाई इन आवर ड्रीम. सपने में हम कभी मरते नहीं. जैसे ही वो मोमेंट आता है कि आप किसी ऐसे सिचुएशन को फेस कर रहे हैं जिसमें यू आर अबाउट टू डाई, ऑल ऑफ सडन वी वेक अप, बिकॉज आवर माइंड डजंट नो व्हाट विल हैपन आफ्टर दैट. So in that sense, language has an integral connection to the mind also. It is a fundamental tool of our cognitive process. So भाषा का जो दायरा है वो इतना ज़्यादा है कि इसके बारे में जो भी डेफिनेशन हम देंगे वो गलत नहीं है। अलग बात है कि वो उसकी ऑथेंटिसिटी की डिग्री कितनी है या कितनी नहीं है, लेकिन गलत नहीं है। बट दिस इज वन थिंग, व्हेन इट कम्स टू डिफाइन समथिंग, व्हेन इट कम्स टू डिफाइन दिस वेरी फिनोमेना ऑफ लैंग्वेज, definition is very simple. Language is nothing but it's the system of science. It is a symbolic system. भाषा अपने आप में कुछ नहीं है, वो सिर्फ कुछ एक संकेत हैं उनकी एक व्यवस्था का नाम है, उनकी एक सिस्टम है। These systems are verbal and non-verbal. जो ह्यूमन सिविलाइजेशन का इवोल्यूशन है उसमें हम सब जानते हैं कि बेसिकली जो सिविलाइजेशनल पीरियड है, सिविलाइजेशनल पीरियड से पहले एक प्रिमिटिव एज थी, व्हेन ह्यूमन वर लिविंग एज एनिमल्स। देयर वाज नो नीड टू फैमिली, देयर वाज नो नीड टू communicate each other verbally, but they used to communicate each other via non-verbal signs. लैंग्वेज के फॉर्मेशन की जो स्टार्टिंग होती है वो होती है नॉन-वर्बल साइंस के इन अरेंजमेंट से, एंड इट इज क्वाइट इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग। पीपल who cannot articulate the language, who are physically disabled, deaf or dumb, but they doesn't mean that they do not communicate. They also do have a tool, and the tool is sign language. Sign language is one thing, it is okay, but it is highly interesting. When I came to know when I was a researcher, and in our university, basically we were offering a course. The title was BA Program in Applied Sign Language, which was running in collaboration with University of Lancaster, UK, and at that time we had international students. We had students from Africa, we had students from Europe, we had students from Asian countries. All were deaf and dumb. They couldn't articulate, they couldn't use language verbally, but very, you can say, proficient in sign language. Then I came to know that sign language is a universal phenomenon. Means if you are sitting here and you want to talk to a person who comes from Europe, it is necessary to know his or her language. But when it comes to sign language, they all are familiar with the same signs. Sign language is universal. There's no difference. There's no difference in terms of letter. There's no difference in terms of meanings. There's no difference in terms of concepts. It is very interesting. So first, language का जो constitution है वो non-verbal science है, और जैसे जैसे जो human civilization है उसका evolution हुआ है, it is quite understood that we developed different symbols. As far as Sanskrit language is concerned, we do have approximately 50 symbols. In English language, the totality is 26. In Chinese language, the strength is around 80. And in case of Chinese, also it is interesting that Chinese language is not scriptural. There is no script in Chinese language. It is pictorial. All these symbols, if you have seen the symbols of Chinese language, these are basically pictures, not letters. So each and every symbol does stand for something, represents something. This is one thing. Next point is, when it comes to symbols, the arrangement of symbols, each and every symbol represents a unique sound. सिंबल्स सिर्फ लिखने के या देखने के आप कह सकते हैं उनकी जो सिग्निफिकेंस है वो लिख देने की या पढ़ देने तक की नहीं है, वो साउंड क्रिएट है। और ये जो टोनैलिटी है, जो साउंड है, वी ऑल आर वेरी फैमिलियर significance of the spoken language. So in that sense, language is nothing fundamentally, it is a system of science. If we take an example of English language, there are 26 symbols, A to Z. Presently, if you go by Oxford Dictionary, Advanced Oxford Dictionary, there are, I think, more than 10 lakh words comprising by modern Oxford Dictionary. All these more than 10 lakh words are constituted by only 26 symbols. There is only one thing which makes it possible: arrangement, system. And this system primarily has been arbitrary. If there is a word, book, B-O-O-K, why it is B-O-O-K? Why it is not B-O-K, or B-O-K-K, or B-B-O-K? There is no scientific rule behind it. It has been developed, we have to follow. There is no alternative. So this is how the arbitrariness has also played a very vital role even in the scientific formation of language. But language cannot be private. We are bound to follow whatever is given to us. We cannot create our own words. नहीं कर सकते, हम नहीं कर सकते।
रूट वर्ड्स के साथ अभी का मैं बहुत बार ये भी इनमें बहुत सारे वर्ड्स ऐसे
subject of centuries or decades or once maybe in pre-civilized period when human felt a need to develop his or her own language. So there are basically differences between the things. I don't say that वो किसी ने create नहीं किए, but I am ignorant. If I am ignorant, my position is very clear. I can claim this right now that I personally cannot create my own language. So if somebody can create his or her own language, he or she must do, will be benefit in the society. This is one thing. So language basically is a system of science. This system somewhere, somehow has been arbitrary. But once it has developed, then it converted into 100% scientific temperament. That's why we do have grammatical rules. Earlier I said that today my focus is on the scientific formation of language instead of its artistic uses. So when it comes to the study of language, basically there are two different fields. First one is linguistics, another one is literature. As far as literature is concerned, we all are aware that literature is concept, literature is a phenomenon, literature is a subject of subjectivity. It is personal. If I intend to write poetry, it is my right to write poetry. Why I should listen other person to write a prose? And that poetry will be the consequences of my subjectivity, not the other person. So literature is highly arbitrary, it is highly subjective. But when it comes to linguistic basically does stand for the scientific study of language. Grammar we do study in linguistics. Other branches also. There is a term, there is a concept which is called morphology. Morphology basically a subdomain of linguistics. In morphology, those who are experts of words try to understand, try to relocate or locate all these kind of things which you were discussing. That how words created. This comes under the morphology, and those who work on it are called morphologists. शब्द बनते कैसे हैं? शब्द विज्ञान,
वहीं पे फॉर्मेशन है, इसलिए रूट वर्ड ज्यादा जम हुआ तो उन्हीं में हमें ये जानना बैठे
morphology is a science of creation of words. सेकंड जो टर्म है इट इज सिमेंटिक्स. ठीक है, हमारे पास शब्द हैं, वो चाहे जैसे भी बने, वो इंटरेस्टिंग नहीं है, उनसे ज्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग है देयर मीनिंग्स. Semantics does stand for the scientific study of the meanings. How we do produce meanings of different words. Semantics की स्टडी में मीनिंग्स की जो कैटेगरी है उसको दो अलग अलग तरीके से समझने की कोशिश की गई है कि किसी भी शब्द के बेसिकली दो तरीके के मीनिंग होते हैं. फर्स्ट इज कॉल्ड डेनोटेशन मीनिंग which is prescribed by the dictionary. Denotation, diction. ये डिक्शनरी जिस शब्द से बनी है उसका रूट वर्ड डिक्शन. डिक्शन का मतलब ये होता है शब्द. सो डिक्शनरी जिस शब्द के अर्थ को डिफाइन कर देती है, वो डिफाइन नहीं करती है, वो प्रिस्क्राइब करती है. इट इज कॉल्ड लिटरल मीनिंग, डिक्शनरी. डेनोटेशन जो दूसरे अर्थ हैं वो है कोनोटेटिव मीनिंग्स विच आर कॉन्टेक्स्ट बेस्ड, जिसको डिक्शनरी डिफाइन नहीं कर रही लेकिन कॉन्टेक्स्ट आपको फोर्स कर रहा है उस वर्ड के उस मीनिंग को अडॉप्ट करने. कोनोटेशंस मीनिंग आर ऑलवेज हाईली कॉन्टेक्चुअल. इसका एक एग्जाम्पल लेके चल सकते हैं हम लोग. There is a term red, R-E-D, red. If you go by the dictionary, the output is it is a color. Red is nothing, prima facie it is a color. This is the prescribed meaning. लाल कुछ नहीं है, वो सिर्फ एक रंग है. But it does stand for love. Does stand for revolution, it does stand for anger, it does stand for shame. ये जितने भी मीनिंग हैं ये सारे डेनोटेशन मीनिंग जो कॉन्टेक्चुअल. इसके बाद फिर सिंटैक्स है जिसमें सेंटेंस की फॉर्मेशन होती है, और इस बात को हम बहुत अच्छे तरीके से जानते हैं कि सेंटेंस की फॉर्मेशन के सबसे पहले हमारे पास वर्ड्स होते हैं. वर्ड्स का एक ग्रामेटिकल अरेंजमेंट होता है जो सेंटेंस प्रोड्यूस करता है. तो लैंग्वेज का ये जो लिंग्विस्टिक एस्पेक्ट्स है इट इज ऑलवेज साइंटिफिक. इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा आर्बिट्रेरीनेस की जरूरत नहीं है. अब ये एक चीज़ है. दूसरा, इस डिस्कशन का जो सेकंड फोर्थ था कि लैंग्वेज पावर के डिस्कोर्स में किस तरीके से आप इसको लोकेट कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, वो तो एक भाषा है और उससे जो भी हम करते हैं सबको पता है कि भाषा से हम क्या करते हैं. लेकिन एक जो चीज़ है जो उससे पहले समझने की है, हम जो भी चीज़ भाषा के साथ करते हैं, बट व्हाट लैंग्वेज डज विद अस. भाषा हमारे साथ क्या है, और यहीं से पावर के डिस्कोर्स में इसकी एक सेंट्रल लोकेशन की स्टार्टिंग हो जाती है. इन सिंपलेस्ट लैंग्वेज कनेक्ट्स आवर इनर कॉन्शियसनेस with the outer realities of this phenomenal, or we can say substantial world. भाषा हमारी अंदर की जो चेतना है, उस चेतना को बाहर का ये जो प्राकृतिक संसार है इसके साथ जोड़ती है. See, we all are living in a substantial world, in a physical world. Physical world does mean that we can touch the world which does exist around us. Each and everything is subject to touchability. That's why it is physical. It is not in abstract form, neither in philosophical form. However, we always envisage to have a philosophical world into our mind. हम सबके माइंड में इस वर्ल्ड की डिफरेंट लेयर्स जो कि फिजिकल हैं, एब्स्ट्रैक्ट हैं, हमेशा मौजूद है। लेकिन जो बाहर है वो सारी चीज़ क्या है? फिजिकल है, सब्सटेंशियल। तो ये जो आउटर वर्ल्ड की रियलिटीज हैं, इनको हम लैंग्वेज से ही जानते हैं। दिस इज चेयर। हाउ वी कम टू नो दिस इज चेयर? बिकॉज फर्स्ट वी डू हैव familiarity with the language. That in English language there is a term which is called chair, and chair does stand for this particular object. There is nothing special in this object that it could be chair also. It could be horse also. But it has been developed in such a way that this is chair. Kursi. This object is chair only in case of English language. This is not chair in Hindi language. And we do have a term, we do have a substitute. This is called kursi. Kursi is not a Hindi word. It is an Arabic term. Even in Hindi language, we do know that what kind of object we are having right now. So because we don't have adequate knowledge of language, so we are ignorant about the object which is there in front of us. So this is the power of language which does connect our inner consciousness with the outer realities of this substantial world. जिस संसार की एग्जिस्टेंस का हम एक माइक्रो पार्ट हैं, वो पॉसिबल है सिर्फ और सिर्फ लैंग्वेज की वजह से। एंड दैट्स व्हाई दिस टाइटलिंग, नेमिंग इज ए वेरी नॉट ओनली अ पॉलिटिकल एक्ट, इट इज हाईली पावरफुल ऑल्सो। अगर आपके पास चीजों की टाइटलिंग करने की लिबर्टी है, इट इज हाईली पॉलिटिकल एक्ट and very powerful also. And now there is need to understand the very basic concept of power also. When we articulate this term power, power does not mean to let other people to do whatever you want them to do. Power basically is not objective, it is subjective. It does stand for liberty to choose. क्या बोल रहे हैं?